So should we build there? Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public. Welcome to this meeting of the Development Control and Licensing Committee. Just for clarity, I'm taking the agenda in the order printed. It has been the custom when deputations to go back to the head of the agenda. As you see, there are 7 papers, so for the smooth running of the meeting, I'm leaving the order as it is. Recording of council meetings, any member of the public may film, audio record, take photographs, use social media to report the proceedings of any meeting that's open to the public. A protocol facility is available and it is there. It does not include recording any members of the public who may not have given permission to that in case. Right, thank you very much indeed. Do we have any apologies, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes. Confirm the minutes of the Development Control Licensing Committee held on the 5th of July. May I have a proposal, please? Mr. Dale, thanks. Secondly, Mr. Oxley. Those in favour, please. And abstentions. Thank you. 3 abstentions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. I have to make a declaration myself on agenda item 6, item 2, the application for Uppingham. I have chaired the Uppingham Neighbourhood Plan Group and I currently chair the Town Centre Task Group. I shall withdraw from chamber, take no part in the meeting, but I will exercise my right to make a short comment before I leave the chamber. Any other declarations, please, Mr. Oxley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The same agenda item. Dr. May used to be my doctor many years ago, so it's personal but not prejudicial. I thought I'd just mention it out of probity.
Thank you, Mr. Oxley. And Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Chair. The last one on the screen there, Great Castleton, I happen to know one of the people involved pretty well. I will stay for everything, but I will abstain from the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Coming round, Mr. Cross.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On the Manton issue, just to say that I do know the family. And I've actually joined with you in a meeting concerning various aspects of this planning, but there'll be no pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Mr. Lammy.
Not pecuniary interest in the same light as Councillor Oxley, where I had previously seen Dr. May.
Dr. May, yes, we share that. Thank you. Right, thank you. Petitions, deputations, item 3, and questions.
No received, Chair.
Thank you. And item 4, deputations relating to planning.
2 deputations have been received, Chair, relating to item 5, one from the Parish Council, presented by Mr. Alley, and one to be presented by Mr. Gooding.
Thank you very much, and as I say, we will deal with those at the appropriate agenda item. So we now move on to item 6, and the first one there, which is the Langham site for families. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is the Paddocks site in Langham. Some members may be familiar with it. I mean, dealt with the previous applications there. The site is here, sort of midway between the edge of the village and the end of the Oakham bypass to the south there. The dotted line shows the extent of the Langham conservation area, which is referred to in the agenda report. And the conservation area includes the school, which is located here, and this row of relatively modern properties on this southern side of the A606 as it turns the bend at that point. This is a closer view of the site as it exists at the moment. Planning permission was granted on a permanent basis in 2013 for the occupation of these 4 plots here, each of which was limited to 2 caravans or mobile homes. The current application relates to the yellow area to provide, as you can see, virtually a mirror image of the 4 plots, to provide 4 more plots, each again to have 2 mobile homes or caravans placed thereon. So this yellow line is within the original red line for the site, which included all of this area right to the rear hedge. So there's no extension of the actual site involved in this application. It is merely to vary the 2 conditions that are set out in the agenda to allow slightly different occupation to include the grandchildren of the applicant. And the second condition, as you'll see, instead of restricting the occupation to 8 units, would be 16. Access to the site is at this point here, off the A606. Apologies for this picture, I think it's the connection into the wall. We don't touch it because we might lose the picture altogether. The access is in here, and then it turns sharply, comes here behind the quite substantial hedge that has a fence line inside it, and then gives access down into these 4 plots on this side. So again, this is the red line here is the equivalent of the yellow line that you saw earlier, showing the 2 mobile homes or caravans, whatever they may be, on the plots, together with the amenities block that is also included in the application. Similar blocks do appear on the existing site, and then the land at the rear of those plots would remain open areas, play areas for children, as they are at the moment. So here, at the bottom of the screen, you see the access into the site. The applicants indicated that they will plant a new hedge and trees along this boundary, so that the extra glimpse you get through the gate of these units will be screened to some extent as well. That's the detail of the amenities block, which reflects quite closely those on the existing site. So those are the main issues that are set out in the report. The principle of development in this particular location, that's informed mainly by the policy, the visual impact of the proposal, the highway safety and ecology. So these are some photographs taken within the site. In the distance there you see round to the right is the access, and the A606 runs parallel to this fence. These were taken some time ago when the hedge wasn't in leaf as it is at the moment. And then that's looking in the opposite direction from the access behind the camera. It swings round, and this fence here is the edge of the current application part of the site. And that's a view across the 4 plots that are subject to this application, and you'll see the 4 existing plots there in the distance. And that's a view again from the first of the existing plots back in the opposite direction, and the access would be over there on the right. And that's a view back from the access road across the first of the proposed plots that was taken more recently, and that's the line of the fence that goes to the access in that corner. So you can see there's quite a substantial hedge line along not only that side but also on the southern approach from the Oakham direction. So just looking at the main issues again briefly, it is a variation of an existing permission, so it's not for an extension of the site. It doesn't include the occupation of the site by any more occupants than are on there already. The new plots would be occupied by the children and grandchildren of those that are living on the existing site at the moment. You can see the report refers to a very recent assessment that was only published a week or so before the agenda was published, which sets out the latest situation with regard to future need for plots. And you'll see that by 2021 there will be a need for 8 additional plots, of which these will provide 4 of those. And in the long term, I think the figure was 13. The site allocations and policies document doesn't actually include any policies on gypsies and travellers, but so policy CS12 from the core strategy is the one that sets out the criteria-based policy for dealing with these applications now. And you'll see that the report clearly sets out, if it's from A to E or A to F, what those criteria are, and the report also sets out the officer's consideration of those and concludes that the proposal does comply with all of the aspects of that policy. In terms of visual impact, as you've seen and heard, there is quite substantial hedging, fencing and trees around the site. New trees were planted on the site some years ago when it was first occupied, and they've continued to grow. And there is a commitment from the applicant to do more. In terms of highway safety, the Highway Authority were quite happy that the access itself is wide enough. It's 5.1 metres wide, which is quite substantial for a single access into this site. The gates and the hedge at the back of the highway verge are set back approximately 9 metres from the edge of the carriageway. So again, that gives quite adequate visibility and width within the highway verge itself. So there's no need to do any work for visibility to the existing hedge and fence along the front of the site. The applicant wasn't aware that they were allowed to trim that verge, because when I first visited there 2 or 3 months ago, I had to reverse into that access because the gates were locked and the applicants were away. And when I came out, the grass was over 1 metre high, and it was very difficult to see whether anything was approaching from the Oakham direction. It has since had its standard 1 metre cut along the edge, but the Highway Authority has confirmed that the applicant is able to trim the verge themselves to make that access better. And when they were informed of that, they were quite eager to be able to do that. And I think when I went past it the weekend, I think some extra work has already been done there. With regard to ecology, the final issue that's set out in the report, it was suggested that because there are ponds nearby, an updated report for great crested newts might be appropriate. But the nature of the site is such that it is currently overgrown with grass, but it is normally kept cut quite short, and the main ponds in the area are located beyond the 4 existing plots, which are all subject to a hard core, loose gravel sort of base, which is not conducive to great crested newts. And when our ecology consultants were made aware of that, they were happy that no further surveys were required. So you'll see in the recommendation there's a note to applicant to deal with that. So on the basis of those issues, Chairman, it's recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, members. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that this issue is slightly unusual and different to ones that we've dealt with regarding mobile or temporary accommodation in different areas within Rutland, as this is listed as an extension. We were told in the report that there will be no more people coming to this site, and in fact, from the report, there are actually 29 people through the 4 families living there at the moment. Put in another 8 units, doubling in size, 16 units, 29 people. That's less than 2 people per unit. Personally, I have concerns about this and about the real underlying request for the extension. That is my first point. My second point, regards certainly the ecology question, no site visit by LCC. This is a look at an aerial photograph. I think that in other areas we've been more diligent in our approach to the ecology rather than just looking at an aerial photograph. From a policy point of view, when we look at the RCC fixing and travel accommodation study in 2013, and then we look at the recent Gypsy Travel and Short Group Accommodation Assessment in 2016. I agree that that assessment says there is an overall requirement in Rutland, not Langham, Rutland, for the next 20 years of some 13 residential pitches. The 2013 accommodation study states quite clearly there is no requirement for further sites in Langham, private, public or transit. Neither is there any requirement to extend the existing sites beyond their current size. And for me personally, I don't see that that is superseded specific to Langham by the 2016 report. I find the idea of putting in the additional WC blocks, where it's stated quite clearly there are no extra people coming to the site, so there'd be very little impact. Why put them in if there are no additional people coming to the site? And my final point is a question, and it fits in with the request. The question is regarding where it states in the recommendation that no commercial activities shall take place on the land, including storage of materials. Planning officers have visited, so I'd like to ask the question whether there was any evidence of that, and historically, has there been any issues with it? And I think I went to the site and sort of peered over the hedge and round the corner, but obviously did not want to invade anyone's privacy as such. But I think, given the nature of this and the public interest which it had shown, that we should, councillors should have a site visit before making a full decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Could we answer the specific question, Mr. Conley?
The final question. Yes, Chairman. No, in my experience, there's never been any complaints or evidence of commercial storage or activities on the site. I think the applicants are generally involved in landscaping matters. They do travel nationwide employing that business, so, but I'm not aware of any problems at the site itself.
The legal officer would just like to comment.
Thank you, members. If I could just comment in relation to potential use of the site that you did touch on, I would just like to remind members that they shouldn't speculate as to intended use in the future, and certainly in terms of occupation, there is a condition at condition 1 that limits that to specified persons, including dependent children and grandchildren. Certainly if there were concerns, if permission was granted about use, the council's planning enforcement team would be able to look into that, and there's a condition there which could be enforced against if that became necessary.
I'll let you come back, Mr. Conley, and then I saw Mr. Cross at action before you started. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, it's just a quick question regarding the 2016 report for the whole Rutland and the 2013 report for Rutland, which specifically stated no need for expansion or extra within Langham. The 2016 report, as I read it, refers to the whole of Rutland and doesn't say not Langham.
Yeah, the 2016 assessment clearly supersedes the 2013. I don't think that the 2016 assessment is specific to anywhere in Rutland, but if you look at paragraph 6.5 of the site allocations policy, which is extracted in the report, I think it's always been known and been quite clear that there would be a requirement for expansion within this site. And going back to the earlier points that you made, about persons per unit, etc. I think these 4 plots are not necessarily going to come online straight away. Once the permission is implemented, it lasts forever, so they can occupy those plots as and when they're needed within the existing family unit. So some of those children are young at the moment, but the provision will be there for them to have their own plot on that site if and when they're ready for it. So hopefully there won't be another application forthcoming on this site for some considerable time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually greatly troubled by the recommendation. And I'm troubled by the fact that we have families on site that have decided that Rutland is the place to live, and as they are now living, as far as I can understand, there's no travelling element. And I think we have to be very, very careful with the consultation from Langham, with their thoughts and wishes in front of us as to the decision that we make this evening. It's very clear to me that families do wish to stay together. However, when our children wish to have a house, and our grandchildren wish to have a house, are we to automatically to be allowed to build another house within our allotted areas? I'm a great believer in one rule for everybody. The family here have been very welcomed into the area, and especially by the villagers of Langham. They've made themselves at home. The children are at school. They are not, in my view, travelling. They are not travellers, as we understand the term. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, I am going to be very hard pushed to be persuaded to agree to the officer's recommendation. And I'm indeed exceedingly sad that we have such a recommendation in front of us. Thank you.
Mr. Cross, thank you. Mr. Oxley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we're being asked this evening to alter the existing permission for the family, and they have decided, presumably they have decided that they need more space because the family is growing. If we look through the report, it actually states that there are, I made a note of it, all of the, excuse me, here we are, yes. There are 4 main couples on site, the applicant and her husband, and 3 of their children with their respective spouses, who have 2, 5, 6 and 3 children respectively, of which 2 have a total of 5 children of their own, which means that on site there are 8, 13, 16, 17 children. And that is the reason why they have now asked for permission from this council to put more accommodation on the site to allow those children access to toilets and sleeping areas which are going to be less crowded. It must be very crowded for them, and as the families grow, it's going to be even more crowded. As to Councillor Cross's comments about whether or not they're travelling, I don't think that is actually relevant to what we are being asked to this evening. We're just being asked to, the family has asked us to allow them to expand onto the other areas of the site because of their growing family. And we mustn't lose sight of the fact it's actually children who are going to be impacted upon if we refuse this evening. They don't want to be living in cramped accommodation, they want to be given the opportunity of moving into new accommodation. That's all being asked to, and I can't see any problem myself personally in allowing this. There have been no objections that I know of from the wider community with regards to the conduct of people who are living on this site. It's a very sustainable site, it's close to all the schools, and as someone who was very involved in the decision-making process of originally, I can't see any difference between then and now. as far as reasons to refuse. Thank you.
Yeah, just bring Mr. Hodgett in on the policy side, Mr. Cross.
Just to reiterate on some of the points that Mr. Cross made, I mean, I just would remind members again that this is an application to vary the existing permission within the existing red line site that was originally granted. It's not to expand the site, it is only to allow the existing children that are having their own families to stay and be accommodated within that site. With regard to travelling, from the evidence that I've seen, these families do travel. They're away for most of the summer. They go to various conventions, they travel to Scotland working, and if you travel past the site regularly, you'll notice that the gates are quite often closed and locked, whereas when they're on site, they're normally open. So, in my experience and from speaking to the representative of the family recently, I can confirm that the families do travel.
I would just add, unlike Mr. Oxley, like some other members, you will see from the papers that the planning history includes the application to make the temporary site permanent. We refused that. I remember challenging the expert from Hampstead, I think it was, that if you are travelling, that is my dictionary exactly what it means, and therefore permanent and travelling seemed to me to be contradictory. We lost that on appeal, and so therefore we are in the position that the officers outlined. For members' benefit, and you may already have asked yourself this question, I did ask in briefing that this would be part of the provision, the quota, if you like to put it that way, for Rutland up to 2020, and the answer is yes, it is. These additional plots are knocked off that requirement, if you like. From memory, I think it's 13 minus 8. And the final thing, which is influencing the way I'm looking at this, is that until shortly before this meeting, Langham were intended to make a deputation. I have no reason to speculate, I'm sure the legal officer wouldn't let me speculate, why that delegation has been withdrawn, but let me make the assumption that it's because Langham are satisfied with the officer's explanation in that report. And I think if not being absorbed in the community, certainly the original comments from Langham were of peaceful coexistence, if I can put it that way. There is no suggestion that there's been anything on the site to upset the residents of Langham. So other members would like, Mr. Conde.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that I disagree with Councillor Oxley's comment regarding the crowded nature of the site at the moment. There's 29 people in total, 8 adults, 21 children. They have 8 pitches available there, so they can put an adult in each, and then a couple of children in each, 2 or 3 children in each. I don't consider that to be overcrowding. The idea that it's for potential future use by maybe the children's children, I don't see that as being conducive towards what we're doing now. With hard standings, you know, to be set up, or just the planning permission to be in place for those to take place. I just don't get it about this, you know, overcrowding. It's definitely not overcrowding, and I would also really request that before this committee makes a decision, that we have an assisted guided site visit, because, as I say, to just look at an aerial photograph and peer around the hedge is not giving me enough of a feel for what actually is there and what is being requested.
I take when Mr. Conde, I don't wish to stifle debate, but we are getting rather away from the principle we're looking at, which is, are we prepared vary this, the officer's report makes it absolutely clear, rather than getting into detail about... members, if you could please focus on the actual principle of what we're dealing with. I say I don't wish to slight the debate. Mr. Conde has made the point, I think, that he would like a slight visit. It is entirely up to him to make that presidency again support if he wishes to do so. Personally, I think we have enough information, but I accept there's a difference. I saw Mr. Langham, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, this went to appeal and it was granted, so the actual principle of residential use of this site isn't in question. And I think the key thing is it is an amendment to it, the current application, but I can't speculate the sort of the reason go. Currently, looking at the site and the site plan, I think it is clearly obvious how much of it has been used to spare capacity. But for me, we talk about if I think Councillor Cross touching on where this comes under policy and how it affects. For me, the nature of the site, I was here for the previous application, does come under policy the CS12, which relates to the Egyptian travellers from the previous application and what's been put in the report, and from knowing the site, that's clearly applicable. We have the new 2016 accommodation assessment, which shows there will be a requirement put upon Rutland for these extra space, for these extra pitches. This, as you see, meets the requirements. We can't, will have to be a need, so it's that, and I'm just going through all of the issues which are outlined. I know what colleagues have said, but I cannot justify refusal on the weight of the arguments against it. I don't think in policy terms they are working. Councillor Conde talks about the visual impact. He wasn't able to see the site, so he had to clear over the heads. So I think that would sort of show it is well screened. So I do know what colleagues' concerns, but I can't see the objections having a weight in my eyes, so I would be supporting the officer's recommendation.
You bring both of the gentlemen back, but I'll take Mr. King, who hasn't spoken before.
Chairman, the only thing question I got is what the legal officer, as far as I'm concerned, speaks our policies, but clearly we have an emerging neighbourhood plan, which has got a different policy. It was always my concern that two different policies. If we grant the vision tonight, what route is open to the neighbourhood plan to challenge that decision?
Thank you, Councillor. Neighbourhood policy should generally be in accordance with the wider development plan of the local authority, and accordingly as the policy goes through the consultation process. And I must admit I'm not entirely sure where the Langham policy is, but that will be a matter that is taken into consideration. Certainly if it's not been before the inspector yet, that is something that the inspector may well pick up on if it is not in accordance with Rutland's own policies.
I think we check the wording in the neighbourhood plan policy in the act itself. It isn't as you describe it. It doesn't say it has to comply exactly with our policy. There's a requirement of general compliance, but not exact. So we have got neighbourhood plans already established where they don't agree with the housing local plan policy and are unlikely to agree with that future plan policy. The Act allows for that. What I'm asking you in the case of today, what process is open to the village that challenges?
Where we are at the moment is that the Langham policy, neighbourhood plan, hasn't been made. Accordingly, as at today's meeting, we can only afford that limited weight based on this particular matter. Therefore, if the decision is made today to grant the application, my understanding is that Langham would be limited in their ability to challenge that because their policy hasn't been made. However, if you do want a definitive view, I would ask that members defer the matter and I can provide an advice note on that.
Chairman, would I be correct in saying a judicial review would be open to the neighbour of that?
There is a possibility for judicial review, but as I say, the difference in this case certainly is that the plan hasn't been made yet, and that does affect the weight and probably the prospects of judicial review. But certainly it's something that Langham could consider. But in terms of members today, the weight you're applying to the neighbourhood plan is one of limited weight.
Mr. Cross.
Most interesting point there, that it's of limited interest that Langham Village in the local plan have 4 statements in front of us, and that is of limited interest. And we're going to vary our permission. No, we're not. We're doubling the size of a current permission. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I would second Councillor Condé's suggestion that we do actually have a site visit, and also we go back to Langham to ask what their real wishes are in this matter concerning their local plan.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's very disappointing that the ward member isn't here this evening. That's one of the main purposes of being a ward member, is to come to this committee, in my opinion, and give the opinion of the village. We've heard diverse comments. We are asked to look at this purely as a matter of planning. I would like to propose that we approve as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second of that, please? Mr. Cross. Yes. Sorry, while I was shutting you off before. Were you attempting to come in, Mr. Cross? No, that's fine. I have a proposal. It has been seconded. I'm going to move to the vote. All those in favour, please. That's in accordance with the report as written. Eight. And against, please. And abstentions. 1. That is duly approved. Thank you very much indeed. We now